Hello everyone, and I would like to welcome you to the second course of Python programming language. This is the intermediate class. So far we have studied many concepts regarding Python programming languages. For example, we worked with data structure and we worked with function and also many more concepts. And in previous sessions, I also explained the concept of object-oriented programming language. And I have created an object from a class that have been already developed by a Python engineers. Okay, in today's sessions, we are going to learn how to create your own class in Python. Okay. So what is class? Class is a blueprint for creating object. This is very important concept, and we have class. Class is like a blueprint. For example, if you create your house, before creating your house, you have design or map. For example, how many windows, how many floors, and how many doors your house should have. So this is the same concept. Class is a blueprint for a creating object. Okay, in this lesson you will learn to build your own class with a unique properties and behavior. Okay, before I jump into class, I would like to explain some properties and behaviors. So what is a properties? We call it also attributes. As I said, each class has attributes or properties. This is all the information about your class. In this case, for example, if you want to create class about a car, in this case you have a color and you have a price for the car. You also have the model, windows, doors, and so on. These are all attributes of your class. Okay, we also have another concept which is called method. So what your car performs or does, in this case your car starts, you can stop your car, you can brake, and you can drive your car. So to summarize, we consider method as a verb. Okay, everything, something which is being performed or done, and attribute, it is like a noun. Okay, now we understood what class is and what are the attributes and methods. Now it's time to create your own class. Okay, so class, for creating a class you use a keyword class and also name of the class. This is very important that the name of class should be capitalized. It starts with a capital letter. And then you have some methods and some attributes inside your class. Okay, this is a simple example. For example, we have a class user, and if you want to create an empty class, you use a keyword pass means, okay, ignore the rest of the code inside this class. This is an empty class. Okay, all right, and let me create a class and I will give you a demo. First I open my VS Code. I want to create a new file. My new class. dot py. Okay, as I said, if you want to create your class, you use this keyword class and then name of the class. As I said, this is very important that the name of the class should be started with a capital letter. Now in this case, for example, car, okay, then semicolon. Once I enter, you can see my code is indented, okay, indented. Now I have created a car, so inside this class I don't want to define right now attributes and methods. I want to create a very simple class which is empty. In this case I use pass. When I write pass, it means that the Python ignores all the codes inside this class. It means that it considers this class as an empty class. Okay, now if I want to create its object, I say okay, the name of the object, and you use name of the class. You can simply create object like this. You write the name of the object and you write the name of the class and parentheses. Now you simply created an object of this class which is tutor. Now what I'm trying to do, I want to add some attributes to this object. For example, a tutor has, for example, color. In this case, the color is, for example, black or white. This is the first attribute, and the second attribute, for example, my tutor has a model, which is, for example, 2022, and tutor has, for example, price. In this case, this is 2022, which is somehow expensive. Let me say 1,000 euro. Okay, this is the first object that I have created from this class. Now, if you want to access some property of this class object, I simply print, for example, I want to access to the model of this class. I write the name of the object and point, for example, in this case, model. Right now, you can see I have access to this model, which is 2022. Now, if you want to access to the price, and instead of model, you write price. Very simple and easy. Now you can see the price of this object. This is the first object that I have created from this class. Now I want to create another object. For example, BMW is the second object. Okay, I said I have created BMW from this class, which is car. Now I want to add some attributes. For example, okay, I say BMW plus, for example, color. In this case, red, for example. And I want to add another object like model. In this case, this is 2020 and BMW, for example, price. And this is not too expensive comparing to tutor. Okay, you can add as many attributes as you want, but these are the sample attributes. Now, if you want to access, for example, I want to access the color of this object, I say print BMW, name of the object, dot notation and color. Now I should be able to access to the price of the tutor and also the color of BMW. You can see this is the price and this is the color. Okay, all right. Now, if you guess this code, this is not very clean code and this is not the right way to write a code, because if you have, for example, 100 objects, this will be somehow complex, okay, for you. It is difficult because you will write 100 lines of code, and this is very complex and not clean. So in order to simplify that, Python engineers, they developed or introduced a concept which is called constructor. Okay, constructor. Okay, let me go back to slide. Okay, we learn how to create your own class. In this case, we created an empty class. We use the keyword pass. Okay, now we also worked to create an instances or object. Okay, in this case, we created instances. We also talked about the naming convention. So class should be started always with a capital letter. This is mandatory. These are some other cases which are used. For example, we have camel cases. This is used in JavaScript. And also we have snake cases. This is used particularly for example, using method and variables. Okay, you are not use this snakes case and camel case to name your class. We only use camel case. In this case, capital letter. This is very important. And also I talked about what are attributes. Okay, I talked about that, how to add attributes to your object. Now I'm gonna explain constructor. As I said, my code is not very clean, and it will be very complicated and complex if you create 100 objects. So in this case, Python engineers, they introduced constructor. So what is a constructor? The constructor method initializes attributes automatically when you create an object, making your code cleaner and more efficient. Okay. Now, how do you define your constructor? You use this define, and you use init, and then you use self. In this is the syntax we used. So as we said, constructor is a special method that runs automatically when you creating your object. Okay, once you created your constructor, then you add some parameters. Parameters is attributes. In this case, we have created some attributes for our objects. In this case, we define those attributes inside this our constructor. Okay, we also include self refers to the object that you are creating. Okay, then we set some attributes. This is an example. Okay, we create a class and then we define our constructor. Inside this constructor are some parameters. In this case, self refers to the object that we are going to create, and then we have other parameters, user ID and username. Now let me give you an example about car, because we already created the object. Now I remove pass because before it was an empty class. Right now what I'm trying to do, I want to define some attributes and methods inside my class. Okay, now to do that, I use to define attributes, I use init, as I said, init. Okay, once I write this diff in it. If you remember from the function, how to define function, we use diff keyword. And as I said, constructor is a special function. Okay, so this init indicates that this is constructor, and self indicates and refers to the object that we are creating. Now, okay, self, as I said, I define some attributes that we have created for each object separately. In this case, for example, as I said, our car had color, our car had model, and our car had, for example, price, and so on. You can define or write as many parameter or attribute as you want based on your requirement. Okay, once you define your parameter, I say, okay, self, when you create your object, I say this parameter, for example, color, the value of color should store inside this object. This is very important. As I said, self.color. Self refers to the object we are creating. So this is the color, this parameter, this value should stores inside this object. For example, you can use another name. For example, in this case, whatever you want. For example, let me call I don't know what should write. For example, in Persian you say rank. Okay, you can write, for example, self.rank, no matter this one. This is important because it refers to this parameter. Now if I want to write another parameter, for example, model, in this case model or design, whatever you want, equal to model. So this is not my code is correct, but this is not more readable. In order to make it more readable, so we use the same name. For example, we say self.model is equal to model. Okay, now for this color as well, self.color is equal to color. Programmer do that. For example, self.price equal to price. Okay, that's enough, and you can add as many attributes as you want. For example, I want to add another attribute, color, model, price, and what else? Okay, I don't know. You can write that yourself. Now I have this class and car. I define a constructor. Inside this constructor, I define some parameter. This parameter, okay. Now I want to create my object from this class. Now I say, okay, I want to create the object, and that is very simple. Now, as you can see, we have this parameter. Now, for each parameter, when you create your object, you have to define some values. Okay, for color, I define the value, for example, red. And for the model, for example, this is 2020 model, and for the price, it is, for example, 3,000 euro. Now this is the first object that I have created with some attributes. You can see these are the attributes. If you remember from my previous code that I created an empty class. Now this is more cleaner, you can see. If I want to create another object, in this case BMW, I use the same syntax. For example, color is, for example, black. Model is, for example, 2012, and the price is, for example, 2000 euro. Okay, as you can see now, my code is more cleaner and it is more simplified. So if you want to access these data for each object, this is very easy. You use name of the object, for example, tutor, plus which attributes do you want to access. In this case, I want to access the model of this tutor. Right now, if I want to run my code, you can see the model. If I want to print some attributes from the BMW, now, for example, I want to display the price of BMW. You can see this is the model of the tutor and this is the price of BMW. Very simple, and now my code is clean. Okay, as I said, each class has attributes and methods. We only worked on attributes. Okay, the attributes are colors, model, and price. Now, how can I define methods for my class? As I said, a car drive, right? Now I want to define my method. If you remember from the method, from the function lessons, how to create function and method are the same. Okay, define, for example, I say start. Now, if you remember, our function should have some parameter. In this case, this is self indicates to the object that we are creating. I explained that. This is the only difference with an ordinary function that you define. Now I say when you start the car, display a message that you started the car. This is my first method, and I want to create as many methods as I want based on my requirement. And this is my scan method. I say break. You braked the car. This is my scan method, and my third method, stop. You stopped the car. Okay, right now I defined these three methods. So if you want to access this method, it is very simple. So for each object, you create name of the object and the name of that method. For example, if right now press dot, you can see all these methods. For example, break, start, stop. Now I want to use this method for my object. You can see you started the car. Now for BMW, if I want to use the same another method, for example, I want to break BMW. I want to break this method for BMW object. You can see you break the car. You started the car. This is how you can create your class, how to define your constructor, and how to define methods inside your class. Okay, and then how to create object from that class, and how to access properties, attributes of that object, and how to use that method. I think it should be clear now for you. As I said, the self parameter refers to the current instance of the class, and it is required in all methods. Okay. And yes, we describe that. We also talked about how to add method to a class. And this is another example that you can do it yourself. And that's all. Okay, in today's lesson, we studied how to create your own class, and I talked about class attributes and methods, and I also described what constructor is and how to create your constructor. And then we finally created our object of that class, okay, instance of that class. Thank you very much. If you don't understand any concept, you can comment and under my YouTube channel, and also if you like the video, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much.